So if you're a fan of VRCat and kind of hang out on that scene, you've probably come across VRoid before. It's kind of an avatar creator, which seems to be used a lot in VR, specifically VRCat. It's Japanese, so when you go to the download page and also all of the documentation, you'll probably want to be relying on Google Translate to help you along. It's in beta, and as far as I can work out in terms of allowable uses, it's okay for commercial for commercial use. So if you've got a need for kind of anime style characters for your games, try VRoid. It's free, so there's already a couple of videos of the workflow into VRCat. I just want to make this video partly for myself, to be honest, so it's a record of the various steps that you have to go through in order to just be able to get a character into Unity. I'm not going to go into VRCat with my avatars. It's mostly for games that I'll be wanting to use it. So just scroll down to the download link and download it. And interestingly enough, what you get is actually a Unity app. You can tell from the structure of the files when you download it and unzip. It is just a Unity app. Pretty cool, great for a Unity app. Fire it up and you'll get an option of some sample avatars, and then create a new avatar, and if you've created any before, you'll see them listed. So we can create a brand new one, or start working from one that exists already. I'll just do that just to kind of make it easier. And so middle mouse button for moving up and down, left mouse button for navigating. Now, I'm not going to do a VRoid how to in terms of, as you zoom in, I'm zooming in with the middle mouse wheel, but just to give you a very brief overview, you've got kind of different sections. It's a bit like Fuse, but not quite as it is still beta, so it's not quite as full featured, but it's pretty powerful as it stands. So you've got your face editor, and then you can kind of, as you select through each different area, so for example the mouth, I can widen the mouth. Sometimes they've got these kind of interesting contradictory sliders, and you'll notice that throughout. So one slider will make it bigger, so the narrowness, minimum narrowness, maximum width, it's kind of going in opposite directions. But if I move that, it kind of goes to the minimum direction. It's a kind of a, I don't know, you can use either one in a way to move the mouth, or to make the mouth wider and not so wide. They kind of both do a similar job. So anyway, you get the idea, and you can do, get down to ears, and let's make ears a bit smaller, whatever. Face contour, chin roundness, chin position. Okay, so I'll go with that as my basic. So that's the face. Now there's always, on each of these, it tends to be a design and a texture. So design will be moving up and down, or actual editing of essentially the mesh, and then the texture is what you expect, a texture editor. So we're on the face, so moving into texture, it allows us to change the base color of the skin, which I don't actually want to do for her, but you can also then literally paint over the texture, and you can see the UVs. So I mean, you can do crazy things like start painting in, and then you can see on her face they appear. You can start painting in So Control Z, Control Z. Thankfully it's got an undo to it. And you can change the opacity, and also you're dealing in layers all the time, and this is the same pretty much wherever you are. So it very much, if you're used to Photoshop, I don't have to paint directly on the current layer. I can create a new layer and maybe paint on it, and then you can change the actual overlay mode, so you know, linear burn, just as you might in not getting much, oh, so yeah, so not getting much in that, but multiply will change things. So you can see, you know, very much like Photoshop, and you can change its opacity as well, and obviously the opacity of the brush as you're painting it. So I could then choose, well, I'm going to slightly change. So I'm still in multiply. It's going to do odd things with what I'm doing. Let me add an extra layer. It's pretty great, you know, the way. So now I'm on a normal overlay. And something I have found, which I have to say is really useful for doing this kind of drawing, which I'm not doing right now, which I should, is using a tablet and pen. Much better to be doing this kind of drawing, but you get the idea. I can, you know, directly draw on top of the unwrapped UV texture. So that's the texture tab, and then the same happens in the hair editor. So you've got design in the hair editor. Let me move this down so you actually see more of the hair. You get the additional bone layers for each of these. They've been given different bones, but as you can see, there's a lot of Japanese still in the UI, and not fully sure exactly how it all fits. But you can change, you know, base color. Let's change her hair to. No, why is that not changing? That's a good question. So I was doing this yesterday and seemed to be working quite well. Thank you very much. In changing them in the editor. So I'm not 100% sure. Is it because I'm not on default image? Maybe. Let's try that. Or do I have to somehow select it? No. So beta, seem to be 2 layers. So in fact, no more than 2 layers. There seem to be 3. Okay, so I'm guessing there are 3 component parts to what makes up the hair. This becomes slightly more obvious if you create a character from scratch. So I'm guessing that will suddenly, yeah, there we go, that will suddenly change her hair. Let's make her more red-headed. Okay, make the highlight just a little bit. Okay, so you get the idea, you know. So yeah, that's interesting. Watch out for those 3 component parts of. That kind of ties into if you're on the design tab and you have the pencil, and suddenly you see the kind of the a mesh outline. You can start drawing and pulling with my left mouse. You can start pulling in, you know, tufts of hair. That's how that hair has been made. I'm just going to add one at the front, maybe. And it's actually wonderfully intuitive, I have to say. I'm very impressed. If you get it wrong, just Control Z, undo. That's looking good. I give her one more tuft of hair. That's maybe a bit too much. And you can do things like tweak individual nodes on the splines. if you want to. So it's, you know, really flexible. Do I want to keep this one? Maybe a bit too much, that one. And you seem to have, it seems useful for undo. It's got a really good undo history. It's actually taken me all the way back to where I was. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. That'll do for us. So that was the hair. But again, the hair's got its texture, and yeah. So remember, you've got the 3 layers. I think they must be to do with the different parts of the mesh. Body editor is very much the fuse thing, you know, size of different parts. As you would expect, go crazy with that. Different parts of the body. Clothing editor. Again, there's a design. Now, there isn't currently, it seems, a way of bringing in your own clothes, your own meshes. You just get a choice of what's there. So, base model is naked, essentially, no clothes, and then a school uniform. Very, you know, archetypal manga type stuff. One piece and pants. Pants meaning the American for pants, i.e. trousers. But the editor for the clothes is there as well. So if you select the texture, not just the base color, but actually select the texture, you can do, you know, what you would expect. You can draw on there, and again, similarly, you've got layers, so you can add an additional layer. And you might say, right, I want to, don't know, paint all of this green, if you wanted to, and then not just paint it green, but you know, you could do a linear burn on that green tint. So you can get creative, and I'm not sure if there's any way of importing your own patterns, your own textures. The default image is assume what's come in, so I guess that's what you would want to be able to add in. And there's some nice tools, you know. You can delete. You can see I'm actually, what I'm doing there is I'm deleting the default image. Better undo that, eh? The layer I was working on. I haven't found a way of renaming, but you can import and export. Well, that's probably the way to do it. There you are, I found something. Right clicking on default image, that would be a way of, so if you exported, you'd be able to get the UV layout essentially, and then you could completely change that in Photoshop and then import it instead of this. So yeah, so there you are. And let me go on to that layer where I painted my green and just essentially delete the additional stuff that I've added. Didn't like that, might go red instead. Make it darker. Okay, and I'm painting in, yeah, linear burn mode. Brilliant. And hey, why not? Let's do the whole skirt. Make it. It's quite, I found it quite fun and creative, which I like. In fact, a lot more creative than Fuse, I think. I have to say, it's much easier to access these textures than it is in Fuse. In Fuse you really do have to export things and then open them up in Photoshop. Okay, I mean, I'm doing this really roughly, just to give you an idea that it's completely customizable, and not just the texture tab, but also you can, although I mentioned the presets are pretty basic in terms of the meshes of the clothes, but they're you know, some customizability. There is some customizability over the clothes there. Okay, so that's the clothing part. In the general editor, I haven't really messed around with so much. It kind of overrides on top of everything that you've done previously, I guess. So this is the eye stuff. I'm not sure. Oh yes, one bit of the face I didn't really mess around with so much is the eyes. And they're quite fun to play around with, I've found. Let me make my own layer. Let's say, for example, make her eyes a little bit bluer. Just for fun. So that would be how you would change eye colour. And you can do eyelashes just using kind of the base colour. I don't think you would have to go. Just go really red with that. Okay. Zoom in, see what I've got. A pretty crazy looking. Let's go green. Pretty crazy looking girl there. Right, that'll do. Gives you an idea of the customizability. Okay, so how do you get all of this out of VR Studio, or VRoid Studio? There's some animation and this kind of capture facility, so you can go into. So this is the facial expression. Joy and surprise. So they're blend shapes on these models, and these get exported as part of the export, so you don't really need to go too crazy at this stage. And the background is not going to be important. We're not actually going to capture anything in here. Ditto lighting and pose. I mean, yes, you can do lots of animation in here, but actually you want to keep it in the T pose. And what we're most interested in is the exporter. So if I go, definitely want to keep the original quality. Don't want to shrink the texture quality because I can do that later. And just press export, and I'll ask you the name of the avatar. So my test avatar, that'll do. Everything else is not important. It's really to do with VRM, which is this file format for VR avatars, which I know next to nothing about, but I've been kind of slowly finding out about, and that's all you need. So press OK, then it's going to ask you, okay, so let's go there. So I'm going to call it Darkness Shibu, must be the name of the original that I've just kind of copied from. So my avatar test, and as I say, the file extension is VRM. So let's save that, and we're done in VR Studio. We've got what we need. Do you want to save it? Not really. I've not done anything that special, but you can save it and you'll be able to reload it. So avatar not to. Do you want to quit? Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm not reading. Yes, I do want to quit that. So your next stage is in Unity. You need to, so I'll make links available to these. You need to download UniVRM package and VRMtoPMXExporter. So you'll notice some recommendations for getting stuff out of VRoid Studio is to go via just straight into FBX, and some also go via a rename to GLB, which is a kind of an OpenGL format. these don't seem to work quite as well. They don't keep as much of the blend shape information, so this is why this turns out to be it's a lengthier process, but it gives you a much better character at the other end. So you just, they're just packages like any other, you just import them. So I'm just going to do that now. So that's the UniVRM import, and then I'm going to do the VRMtoPMXExporter. So the UniVRM allows import and export of VRM. Obviously we're going to import, we got that going, there we are, import. So UniVRM will do import and export in the VRM file format into Unity, but the VRMtoPMXExporter gets it to PMX format, and PMX is actually what we're going to open in Blender, where we do some extra fixes. But let's do the Unity part first. So now we've got those two packages opened. Just going to create a folder for our character. So my avatar, or avatar, and so there's my export somewhere in one of these folders, and you literally just bring it in. What do I call it? My avatar. So click and drag. Just gonna drag it onto my avatar folder, but anywhere within the project panel in the assets will work. So I'm just gonna let go, and off it goes. It does this import. Slightly hidden, unfortunately, by my window. But trust me, behind the scenes, actually, let me see if I can. No, I can't get Unity to give me back focus. So it's all happening under the hood. But it's just an import process, and you'll see what it gives us in a second. There it is. So inside here, it's created these files, and this is in the VRM format. You can bring it in. I'm using Pro Hierarchy, but I don't want most of what it's showing me. I'm just going to hide that. That's better. So here we are. Here's our character, but in a kind of a weird format. It's not, all the bones and stuff are kind of file extension specific, not what you would want to do mecanim animations with. So this is why we have to do a little bit of work with it. The main thing we have to do is rename the textures folder to text, and that's purely so that when we open it in Blender, it will automatically recognize the texture folder and automatically know where all the textures are. So what we need to do, and we've used VRM to import, we're going to use PMXExporter to export in that format. So you just add suppose it PMXExporter as a component. So you do it on your you do it on you import it into a hierarchy, select it, add PMXExporter, and then just use a little cog. Now you can't quite see it because of just the way that my capture is working, but I'm going to let you see it by putting it there weirdly. PMX little cog, and you've just got this export option. I'm going to do that. Export. It's going to ask me where do I want to export it to. I'm going to export it into the assets, why not, and I'm just going to call it PMX, just so that I know what it is, and because if I call it the same thing, no, that's the wrong folder. In here, in my avatar test PMX, save. Otherwise, if I didn't call it -PMX, it would just have the same name as this file, and because Unity doesn't show you the file extensions, it would be hard for me to know which is which. So that's the original VRM file, and I'm saving out to a PMX, exporting to PMX. So here we go. Is that done? No, it's still thinking about it. Okay, so it felt a little bit like Unity was hanging there for a second, but then it gave me back control, and you didn't really have a notification of it doing anything, but I can tell it's done something now because it's given me in the console just this notification that my avatar.pmx is exported. It's not exporting it what I expected, or either that or I'm not seeing it. Let's try to confirm that. So show an explorer. Oh, there it is. We've just managed to wake Unity up. So it is now. Actually, it is showing it. So there's the file. Great. So we got that. Next, let's fly over to Blender. Now, a couple of things you need to install in Blender. One is a must, and the other one back in here. So again, I'll make links to this available. So one is a must, and that's the Cat's Blender plugin. So if you don't know how to install a plugin for Blender, it's in File, User Preferences, Add-ons, Install add-on from File, and you just click on that. Go to the, where your zip file is. You don't need to unzip it. If I go to wherever we are, actually it's up. Actually, it's not on G, it's on in here. So you would select that and then just click on Install add-on from File. So select that and then Install add-on from File. And in the bits in the screen that follows, make sure that you tick the save preferences, because if you don't, you have to redo this every time you load the Blender. If you're not sure about installing plugins for Blender, again, there are lots of videos showing you how to do that. And that loads in Cat, which imports the VRM, is it? Oh, too many file formats. So, we're moving from VRM to PMX. So that's the one that imports PMX. There you are. It tells me as I hover, exported files, MMD PMX, and includes some useful functions which we'll use some of, but not all. So I'm not going to use the decimation, which does look useful, but the other bit which I think I would recommend installing is the atlasing utility, which is the Cat's Material Combiner for Blender add-on. Again, I'll make a link available for that, and that does come under optimization, but it's not the decimation, it's optimization, and it's an atlas combining. So we're going to use that. So right, first things first, I'm getting myself a bit too far, so it's in G, projects, what do I call it, VR test, assets, my avatar, there's that PMX that we exported. So select that, import, okay, so you get this really weird looking thing comes in, knees bent, texture's all wrong when you first import it. Just click on Fix Model. This is on the Cat interface. Does its thing. Hey presto, you get the model as you expect it to, and you can see how the rig is intact. You can even see the bones on the hair that we never really used, but they're there if you need them. Open the model section. The main thing I found that you do need to do is to do this translation, because everything's in Japanese, so the shape keys for the blend shapes if you don't do this part, will just come into Unity or with Japanese characters, and you won't know that it's blink or smile or whatever they've been named as. So you need to click on the shape keys button, and it tells me it's translated 38 shape keys. That's done. I'm assuming, I've not used the other ones, but I'm assuming that if you found that in your armature all the body parts were incorrect or named in Japanese, that would do a similar process. Translates all materials, translates all bones, yeah. But I found currently with VRoid Studio, it's only the shape keys that need translating. So that's that bit done. And then I'm going to do the texture atlasing. So the first thing to do is you open the bit, you're on texture atlas, generate the material list. So you don't have to do this if you decide that you're happy with it. Quite a few materials for each of the different parts. So you can do your own texture atlasing and combining in Unity, but this is a useful feature. And then once you've done that, just click save, and I'm gonna save it in the texture folder. Why not? Create atlas and then let it do its stuff. So we've done that bit. Now we need to export the model. So we did two things. We combined all the materials into an atlas. Now we don't have that long list of I think about 15 materials, and also we've translated the shape keys. Now we can export the model, and let's go back to Unity, to Unity's asset folder. What are we going to call it? So my avatar FBX, because that's what it's going to be, and export. Done in Blender. Okay, so now we're back in Unity, and you can see my FBX has turned up. Let me move that where I expect it to be. So a few things to do. The rig defaults to generic, but it's a humanoid rig, so apply. Then we want to configure, yeah, why not, save the scene. So we need to configure this avatar. You need chest. On some models, I think the male models from VRoid Studio have a chest. Female ones don't seem to. So yeah, scroll down until you see the chest and just drag that in. And you can zoom in if you're not, if you want to be sure that you've got the right parts. And then the other bit, let me apply that. And the other bit is the head. So obviously make sure that you've got the eye right, but the jaw, you don't want the hair joint. You want to default that to none, because the hair bits aren't anything to do with the jaw. So apply that. Done. If I drag this FBX in, you'll notice a couple of things. It's smaller than the original. Don't know why that is. Finding it comes in at about 1.25 is what you need to make it the same size. And the other thing you'll notice is your materials are all wrong, and that's just because you need to just fix the materials. So material tab, they're currently embedded. You need to extract materials, put them in here, and that's combined with the combined atlas that Blender created. you can see, if you really want to go down that route, you do have access to each of the different parts that I mentioned before, but we'll just use the combined material, and the main thing to do is change that to the VRMtoon. Oh, I've got to move that again for you to see it. Change that to the VRMtoon shader and cut out. So if you use each individual, so if you bypass the stage where I did the texture atlasing in Blender and don't bother, you'll end up with essentially a material for each of these textures, and some are transparent, so they all use the VRMtoon shader. Some are transparent, some are opaque, some are cut out, but I found that cut out for the atlas is the best compromise, and works well for kind of a manga type of look. It's not quite as good as the original. If you go in with each one individually on their own shader with all of their different parameters, you know, customized for each different part, then you get essentially an identical translation. In fact, hey, why don't we do that? I'll show you the difference. So I'd go File New, yeah, reload the startup file, let's delete that. So what did we do? File, no, it's in cat, isn't it? Use cat, import the model. We were in my avatar, so it's the PMX, remember, that you import, and you get that funny looking thing. You go fix model, fixed, you do translate the shape keys, and that's it. You don't need to do, if you're doing VRCat, I think they use the seams, whatever they are, but everything else you can just leave as it is. So just export. So it's going to tell me, yeah, it's not optimized. There's 50 materials. It's going to cause lag for others on VRCat because of the draw calls. But for now, hey, we'll just keep going with that. So we'll call this one FBX2, and you'll see the difference with that one coming in. So I think that's done. Now it's importing into Unity. My FBX2, so the same process, and you can see we have to remap all of those materials. We'll do that in a second. Let's do the rig first. So humanoid, apply, configure, yeah, save it. So bring in the chest, apply, go to the head, apply, and done. So humanoid, finish the materials. So here we go. The materials are kind of there, but also, so they appear in two places, oddly. You end up with materials both in here, like in my avatar test dot materials, and also in the kind of, I think this comes from, yeah, so that's embedded in the Blender export. These are not the ones that you want to use. They're essentially just because Blender has just exported as this bog standard albedo. It's all you've got, and the reason you want to use these is they're the original VRM materials. So you want to use the ones that originally came in through our VRM import, not the ones that got generated from the FBX that has come back in via blender, so we need to just alter that. So let me lock that, open the materials, and it's just kind of match the names. I highlight, iris, I white, face 0 skin, where's that down here, face brow up here, face eyelash, face eye line, face mouth, hair back, hair 01, hair 02, body skin, one piece, and shoes, and then apply. Okay, so probably would have helped if I had dragged it in first. So we still get this issue of the size. Unlock. So still need to do 1.25. But you can see that now this FBX has the same, I guess, the same quality of texture, and that's simply because each of parts, every single one of those, as I was saying, so some use cutout, that part of the hair, but say the shoes are, oh no, the shoes using cutout as well, body cutout, so it's got quite a lot cut out, but they've got different, you know, shader parameters. That's transparent, that's opaque. So you're gonna have to do some way. There's no way that you'd run that or think of that as a game ready asset. There is some work to be done. So you can either, you know, do the atlasing in Blender as I did to get something that kind of approximates what you're looking for, or if you're really after that look, then, you know, look at using a utility, maybe like one batch, or yeah, something like that that will help you texture atlas all of these materials into a single one for performance. But that's pretty much the process. Now we have an character with what you would expect, you know, from a character. You know, let's add a character controller. Animated controller, so first, and that's all good, and just add that here. I haven't got any animations yet, so your animations here you can use, you know, mix them up for any animations that you want to add. So let's go dance crazy, why not? What have we got? Can't make up my mind. Let's do a bit of hip-hop dancing. Oh, actually this one, I'll do step hip-hop. Step hip-hop dance, and just like any other mecanim export, FBX for Unity. Great. So bring that into my Unity folder. Obviously that needs to change to loop, and humanoid, apply, and then now I can drag that in, and you can animate using just normal mecanim techniques. So yeah, slightly more long-winded than I'd kind of expected, but that's VRoid Studio, and the process of going into Unity, then into Blender just to tidy things up and bring it back into Unity 4. So I talked about these blend shapes being preserved. So let me show you now. Because of the translation, we do have all of that kind of, you know, anger and shock. They're all preserved. Oh, and if you haven't got it, I would recommend, oh, if only I could spell, blend shapes. So I use the Pro version. I'm not sure what the limitations of the free version are, but Blendshape preset tools, definitely highly recommend it. It's not expensive for what it does.